Can you put a pond in? You got a big backyard, or you want to buy a big backyard or create something? Are you allowed to have a pond in your backyard? Now, if you're way out on rural land, chances are almost assuredly yes. I'm not. And many of our clients at the Todd Home Selling Team are buying and selling or creating properties with big backyards, at least near town, on the edge of town, or in a transitional suburban area. I'm in an area, if you can't tell already, we'll give you a view here in a second, surrounded by neighborhoods. So initially, when I bought my property, I had a problem. Now, I'll tell you about it a little bit later in the video as to what we did and why we did it. My pond was actually a solution to a problem. But before that, I want to tell you about why you should definitely put in a pond. Find out if you can, push back if you can't, and make a way, because there's lots of benefits. For us, the benefits have been somewhat obvious, and then there have been some surprises. So the obvious benefits for us are, at some times of the year, it's beautiful. It's nice to look at. It's fun. We've been able to fish out of our pond. We put bluegill sunfish in here and a few bass, and at one point some catfish. We've been able to create a little bit more airflow in the area. It's a little bit breezier off that water. We put a pond house, tree house up for the kiddos, and the pond has been a cool view thing for that. Kids have swam some, and then it's been helpful for our landscape. It's helped to irrigate. We've put a pump in there. We've created a fountain at times and some water flow from our big pond to a smaller pond back in the further back area. There have been lots of other things that sound silly to some people, but I have loved spending time back here with my son skipping rocks. You can't do that if you don't have a pond. You're not gonna skip rocks in the swimming pool, so that's a pond thing. I have loved the creativity I've seen out of my kids back here in the pond as they've tried to figure out ways to cross the pond without getting soaked. They've put little inflatable paddle boats in there. My son had a remote control boat for a while. They've created jumps with their bikes, and yes, we let them jump their bikes into the pond. These are things you get to do and let your kids do and broaden their horizons and experiment and learn their limits when you have the space to do it in a big backyard or on some land. So I would encourage you to do that, and that's how the pond has fit into our life to some extent. Now, there's pros and cons and challenges and work that come with some ponds. Ours is almost work labor free, but I did put a pump in there. And I don't know if you can tell in the video right now, but there's a little creek right by where the ducks are right now. And then there's a smaller pond in the back. When I've got everything rocking and rolling, there's a pump that brings water from the big pond up to the small pond, flows in down that little fountain, and the water flows through that creek back into the big pond. Why would I want that? Well, the circulation keeps it cleaner and healthier, keeps the algae off of it. When we've got stocked with fish, we're pumping the fertility from the fish poo, up into the small pond, where I then have planted more fruit trees. And so that nutrient-dense water is then fertilizing, feeding those trees. And when we get this fully developed, I intend to plant a lot more fruiting shrubs and bushes and vines, talking strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, grapes. We've even got some gooseberries and elderberries and things. Not everything works every year, but when we've got constant water and the fertility that a pond can create, we have more and more and more opportunities to do some really, really fun things back here. We've had cannonball contests. We've had who can jump the farthest off the dock at the end of the baseball season or the cheerleading season or soccer or softball or whatever it is. We're often hosting those parties because we've got the space and we love to host. So the pond has created all of that opportunity. I remember one baseball party, I was baiting the hooks for these boys because they were like 4. And I couldn't bait them fast enough. They were just throwing hooks into the water and catching fish without any bait. Now, that might mean we hadn't fed the fish enough that year, but don't worry about that. Memories were made, parents were awed, kids were in dreamland. I know 2 people that were at that party that asked us to help them go and buy properties like this, and we did. And now they're living some of their backyard dreams with their big backyard. So you can get a little romantic about stuff like this if you're into that sort of thing. But if not, let me tell you about how the pond solved a problem for us. Look right over here. Our yard, our soil here in DFW is mostly clay, so it holds water. You can see some of the puddling that's happening over here. Now, most of the year we don't have enough water for that to happen. We're late spring right now, and we've had a ton of rain this year. So we've got some pooling, and honestly, it can get a little gunky and a little bit funky. Not my favorite part of the yard. This whole area was like that. I probably had a 25 by 5 or 10 foot area It was just swampy and gross, to be honest. It was infested with mosquitoes. And so I like to think about my problems as, obviously I want to solve them, but how can I turn that problem into an advantage? So for me, I thought, man, I've got this yucky, low, swampy area that holds water, breeds bugs, and if I were gonna have snakes and things, that's where they would be. So can I have a pond? I'm in a more suburban area. I don't know if I can get away with that. So I go to the city, and did I go ask, am I allowed to build a pond? No, I did not. I said, hey, I've got a problem. I bet it's bothering all my neighbors. Before I bought the property, the previous owner, although a nice guy, wasn't doing anything about it. I would be willing to bear the burden and the expense of putting in a pond to create a cleaner, safer, healthier environment. Am I able to do that? At which point they said, that's great. We always are looking for water retention in all these areas. That would actually help us. You do need to get a grading permit. So I was willing to pay for the permit so that they could dictate how I graded the soil. So they required a 3-1 drop. Every 3 feet you go over, you have to go 1 foot down. I wanted a 10-foot deep or deeper pond, which means I went 60 feet wide. So on each side, for every 3 feet I went in, I had to go 1 foot down. So to get 10 feet down, I had to go 30 feet in. So we met in the middle, about 60 feet wide. And then we went a little bit longer just to make sure that we fully covered that area. My point is, this solved a problem for me. So if you've got a low-lying swampy area, or if you've got an area where you're growing a ton and you'd like to hold some water for irrigation, that might be where you choose to do it. That might be why you choose to do it. Now, we have a free download available to you at a link somewhere around this video where we broke out how I think about backyards and how I help our real estate clients think about designing their yards. We do that in zones. Zone 1 being closest to the house, Zone 5 being farthest from the house. This is the farthest from my house. We call it the dream zone. And for me, I dreamt of having a pond with a dock and planting all sorts of experimental trees and having a pond house or a tree house for the kids, area where we can ride go-karts and four-wheelers and bikes and all those things. So that's what happens back here. And we've achieved a lot of that. Not all of it. There's still lots of things we want to do. I'd love to have a zip line over the water. Mama doesn't necessarily agree with that. We're still negotiating. Let me know in the comments if you're with me or you're with Mama. Do we do a zip line over the water? Do we not do a zip line over the water? I say yes. I think you should too. But let me know in the comments if you're with me or you're without me. Are you against me or are you for me? Just kidding. Okay, so that's what all we have going on with the pond. We love it. We're always trying to find new things. When I trim my fruit trees, we're always sticking limbs around the edge of the pond. There's an apple tree that's surviving at the moment. And every year or 2 or 3, we end up getting a new tree. That cottonwood over there was a limb off of that big cottonwood right there. It doesn't always work, but what did it cost me? I'm cutting them anyway. I don't worry about root stimulator and all that stuff. Stick it in the ground, see what happens. I'm gonna shut up now. We've talked a lot about ponds. You need a pond. Let me know what else you're dreaming of in your big backyard. And if you need a big backyard, you wanna buy one or you need to sell one, let me know. That's what we do in Dallas, Fort Worth, or we can connect you with a great agent or broker anywhere in the United States. I'll see you on the next video.